Hey guys, what is up? Blissidian here again. I told you guys in the last video I would be talking some more about the differences in Bedrock Edition and Java Edition and going over some of the Redstone stuff for specifically for Bedrock Edition. And so I'm going to start out today with the monostable circuits. Now, monostable circuits are made to give a single redstone pulse, just one tick pulse, out of a button push or turning a lever on or something like that. So this would be a pretty standard rising edge mechanical circuit. So this moves a block, so it's mechanical, it moves a block in order to trigger a single redstone tick pulse to this light back here. So I'm going to go ahead and just push this button right here, and you'll see the light will flash on and off really quick. So boop, it's on and off, and there we go. So if you put a lever here, same thing will happen. It will just push that up and the piston will stay extended until you turn it back off. So it'll only ever give one single tick pulse to the lamp back here. Now it is possible to do some trickery with extending your pulse after that, so you get a one-time activation instead of just a single redstone tick pulse. But anyway, that's the main idea behind a monostable circuit. Now this particular one works, and you'll notice I have on the sign up here, it says conditional. So we'll talk a little bit about the condition for that here in a minute, but this thing does work. And so these are kind of all just some pretty typical builds. So this would be a falling edge monostable circuit. So this one activates when the button is pressed, right? And so a falling edge mechanical circuit or a falling edge monostable circuit would activate when the redstone signal goes off instead of when it comes on. So the idea here is you've got a button going into this redstone dust, which will turn this torch off, and that piston will fall. And then when this button depresses, when it lets go, then it will turn the torch back on, which turn redstone on, and this is just a regular monostable circuit, exactly like this one out in front of here. So when we push the button though on this one, we'll notice that we don't actually get any light activation at all back there on the back end of it. Now, this one I have marked as broken. Now, this is the reason why this one says conditional, because this is just a monostable circuit that is a rising edge monostable circuit. So this portion right here with redstone torch, redstone dust, piston, comparator, repeater, and light, that is a rising edge circuit. The only thing that makes it a falling edge is that we're turning that torch off when we push the button. So this doesn't work though. Now this has to do with something about the way that redstone is updated in Bedrock Edition, but I actually don't have a good answer for this. So I've built a system over here because we're going to talk a little bit more about this. So I built a T flip-flop and I built a monostable circuit controlling the T flip-flop. And we'll see here, both circuits work. All right, so this is a rising edge monostable T flip-flop, or monostable circuit with a falling edge T flip-flop, and it moves the block, and there we go. This works every time. Every time you push the button, it'll work. It'll light it. It'll turn it off. Okay, so I wanted to play around with this a little bit though, so I built this. And I figured, okay, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to come in here. I want something to happen when I push that button, and then I want this thing to turn itself back off. So I put in a bunch of repeaters on 4 ticks, and you push the button, it activates, it does its thing, and then it doesn't turn itself back off. Now if I just replace that redstone dust, now it'll turn itself back off. So I'm not sure the reason behind this, and maybe somebody can explain it, but when this monostable circuit here is triggered by other redstone, instead of triggered by the user, it simply doesn't work. So when it goes through, it lights up, nothing comes out of this block. I have no idea why this happens. So this is marked as conditional, and hopefully this will at least help you guys maybe debug something where you got like some piston, some monostable circuit that's not firing off. It doesn't work whenever it's fired by another piece of redstone. And so there are some fixes for that, and we'll talk about those in the next video. But we're going to move on with the mechanical, or with the monostable circuits. So this is supposed to be, in Java Edition, this would be a dual edge mechanical monostable circuit. So what this one does, you push the button, it lights this up, which moves this block over, and also lights this redstone. And this redstone, when it's lit, it gives a single tick pulse, but then it gets blocked by this block right here, and so it cuts it off. Then as the block is retracted, this thing is still on, means this redstone is still on, but then this gets retracted and the whole thing fires one more time as the button releases. And we'll see here that this works partially. It says broken. It does. It's partially broken. So you get a rising edge tick. You get a rising edge tick. Falling edge doesn't work. So I would call this broken because you've got kind of a lot of complexity here for building just a regular old rising edge monostable circuit. That's kind of unnecessary since it doesn't work as a dual edge monostable circuit. Now this would have been another typical Java Edition monostable circuit. This would be a falling edge. So when you push the button, it lights this redstone up here, which powers this block, which activates this piston. Now this torch also powers this block and activates this piston as well. So what happens in Java Edition, when you push the button, it turns on this redstone, powers that block, turns that torch off. And then in the time that it takes for this to all update, this piston would retract, which would power that, and then it would be pushed back out by the power from this redstone torch. Now in this particular case in Bedrock Edition though, it does nothing. And this is again, because of the way that things work in Bedrock Edition, all of this stuff kind of gets updated at once. Instead of, picks everything to update, and instead of letting this piston retract, it says, okay, well, that torch goes off, but this is powered so the piston doesn't retract. This piston is kind of checking to make sure, right? And then when it comes back on, this goes off, but then this comes on, and then this checks again, and it says, oh, well, I'm still powered, and so it still doesn't move. Now this is another one. This is item manipulation, so I would call these mechanical because they move a block around to do their work. This is item manipulation. So now we're going to move some stuff around and get these things to work. And incidentally, this all works well. Okay, so what this does is there's a dropper facing up into a hopper facing down. When you push the button, it activates the dropper, throws the item up into the hopper, which sends out a single tick pulse before the item falls back out of the dropper. As long as you aren't directly powering the dropper, which would also lock the hopper, then you're fine. So if you power one block behind this dropper, you do good. And this whole thing works. On, off, and there we go. That all works good. So item manipulation seems to be incredibly useful in generating single tick pulses and getting really solid circuits built in Bedrock Edition. Now, in Java Edition, this wasn't necessary, but in Bedrock Edition, it just seems like the item manipulation stuff seems to work a whole lot better than your mechanical circuits. They're a lot more stable. Okay, so this one though is a dual edge mechanical circuit that actually works, and this is because of the way that redstone reacts to having a redstone block moved beside it. So this will disconnect and then reconnect when that piston fires. And what that allows this to do is gives you a pulse on the way out and then a pulse on the way back. And so this one's actually interesting that this one works consistently because this piston updates and it turns everything off. And what you would see in some of these other circuits is that when this moves, it'll make the move and then it'll check everything. And this torch would stay off, you would think. But in this particular case, I'm moving a redstone block alongside a strip of redstone or on top of a strip of redstone. This actually works consistently every single time without fail, and you get your dual edge mechanical monostable circuit here. And so this is a really good solid idea if this redstone block is not going to interfere with your circuitry. Now, having redstone blocks inside circuitry, especially redstone blocks that move, you obviously have to be careful about not letting those impact some other piece of redstone that you got sitting there. You push it up to another redstone line, and then things break, and it's beautiful. So moving on, this is a dual edge observer, and of course this works. There is no redstone involved in this at all except for this observer. When you push the button updates the observer because it's actually mounted on the front of the observer, gives you a single tick, and then when the button pops back out, it obviously updates the observer again, gives you another tick, and that's pretty much it. So observer with a button is always a dual edge observer. Now, this one is a falling edge item manipulation. So over here we had the rising edge item manipulation with the dropper facing into a hopper facing into that same dropper. This one works a little bit differently, but kind of the same concept. We got a dropper facing up into a dropper facing across that drops an item into a hopper that goes back into this dropper. And you'll see if you press this button right here, it's going to turn off this redstone torch and fire the bottom dropper. And when the button depresses, it will fire the redstone torch back up, which will fire this dropper to drop an item into the hopper, which will fire off the comparator, and you get the single tick pulse, but you get the single tick pulse when the button releases instead of when the button is pushed. Here we go. And there it is. So with this is a falling edge item manipulation monostable circuit, and this works good. The only thing that I would say about this one, anytime you're firing a item through open air, if you happen to be, testing out this circuit, and let's say, your button, you can't reach the button, so you're like, okay, well, let's put the button over here so I can actually see what I'm doing. I'm just going to stand here and watch it. And sometimes you're working like that, and you pick up your item that you're dropping, and then you don't realize it, and things go bad. So having this, my solution for this, usually what I will do when I have a situation like this is I'm going to go right like, well, not like that. I'm going to go right like this, and I'm going to put a set of stairs up on top of there. Now this item is going to fire in under this little stair block, and it's pretty much impossible to pick that item up. So this is kind of my solution for the firing an item through open air, is just to place a stair block right there, and that sort of takes care of that problem. Now you can still occasionally pick it up if you're standing right here, but there's much less chance in this little bitty spot here. And, the falling edge thing works with a timed circuit as well, and here you'll see this in action. What we just got is we got 3 repeaters here. This repeater will lock that repeater, and we'll see that we can get a single tick pulse out of this guy right at the end of the button release. So on off, there we go. And this, as long as, so in Java Edition you can actually do this. These repeaters set the same. In Bedrock Edition you do have to have your repeater running into your redstone signal line over here that goes out, the one that locks. You have to have that 1 tick higher than that one, or this whole thing doesn't work. And in Java Edition you also can't get feedback if you do it like this, whereas in Bedrock Edition you end up with a feedback circuit that basically never ends because it locks it on. So just something to bear in mind. You do have to have that out, and you have to, make sure that you don't have any sort of feedback loop in there. Other than that, this is an additional falling edge timed monostable circuit that works. So hopefully this will help you guys out with some of your monostable circuits that you might be building in your redstone contraptions. Let you know what works, what doesn't work, and kind of give you an idea on how to build some of this stuff that is a little more complex. So thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.